Welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges cricket podcast brought to you by Seat Tires. Guys, there's been no live cricket on for a while. We've been trying to think of what to do in this time. It's honestly been a little bit depressing, but just a couple of days back, we got news that a very special guest is joining us on this week's episode. So we were very excited. Today we have with us former Indian cricketer, Mr. Saba Karim, on the show with us. Welcome to the show, Mr. Saba Karim.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
Mr. Saba Karim, you've held a lot of different roles throughout your career, and we want to delve in a little bit and deep dive into that today for our listeners. But I have to ask you two questions first. First is, how did you manage to be so good on that Cred ad with the, with the Poopaji line? And you guys just looked like the Backstreet Boys. Ever since that ad dropped, we were all going crazy. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It was actually good fun, but hats off to all those guys who conceived the ad. And I think there's a gentleman from Bangalore, if I'm correct, the director, Ayappa, along with Tanmay Bhatt. They thought about this ad, and then we were approached, and they managed to bring up this excellent idea of all of us decking up like the Backstreet Boys, and they put up their own lyrics on that, and they gave a different kind of a spin. We spent about a day in Mumbai shooting for the ad, but it's good fun because all four of us have played with each other. We understand each other. There was a number of shots in which we had to act together, and we did manage to pull it off quite well. That's what I learned later on when I saw the ad. Yeah, but it was hilarious enacting all those scenes.
It was great. Did you have to do a lot of retakes, or were you natural? Like, did you get it in the first?
No, because we had very few lines to speak. But because the direction was so good, they were able to put all the pieces together. That is why it came out so well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, as fans of the game, we really enjoyed that. It was great fun.
Thank you.
And the second thing I want to ask you is that you are also doing a little bit of podcasting yourself. So for us, that's very exciting. For our fans, we want to say, well, we beat Mr. Saba Karim to it, right? We've been doing this for 3 years. But tell us a little bit about your podcast. Tell us how you got into this.
This is exciting stuff, I must admit. I've never done this kind of work before. So I'm doing this podcast in Hindi, and the platform is called Khelneeti. We discuss generally about cricket. If there is a match going on, we discuss the nuances of the match. We discuss different kind of players, the applications, the mindset, the strength and weaknesses, basically, and analyze the game. And it comes 4 to 5 days in a week. It is for about half an hour to 40 minutes. I do it with Rajiv Mishra, who happens to be a very good friend of mine, and he's been doing national TV, which is for India News, the Hindi channel, for a number of years as a cricket anchor, and he does a very good job at it. I also have with me Nikhil Chopra, a former colleague of mine. We played cricket together, and Rajkumar Sharma. He also joins in twice or thrice a week, who happens to be the coach of Virat Kohli. He runs a very successful cricket center here in Delhi. On top of that, he's also the Delhi Ranji Trophy coach for this season. Yeah, it's good fun. I mean, it is great learning. It gives us a great opportunity, a wonderful platform to discuss about the game, and we do also answer some queries from the listeners. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting stuff for me. Really
Awesome.
enjoying it.
That sounds great. So guys, do check out Khelneeti. And I was sorry, I was so excited because I'm looking at Mr. Saba Karim on Zoom that I forgot to mention that DJ has joined the podcast as well. So you're a regular host for the week. DJ, how are you doing?
I'm okay, man. I'm happy to take a backseat to Mr. Saba Karim on this one. I think he probably deserves it. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to take a backseat on that.
You were very excited about Venkaboys, I know.
Yeah, I have to say the Venkaboys. I can't stop singing. Also, I think Srinath stole the show with his bowling long spells in Sharjah Ki Garami.
Yeah.
Fantastic lines. Just absolutely loved it.
Never.
They really nailed it, isn't it? And I think Srinath and Venkatesh, they were great in that ad. And good to see Manni coming back. And most people recognize him with a turban, but now he's without the turban, and he looks so different and so strange. But it's good to catch up with all my old colleagues.
I'm sure. And speaking of Backstreet Boys, they were pretty big in 1997. And 1997 is when you made your debut as well.
Yes.
So, Mr. Saba Karim, talk to us a little bit about your early career journey. And one of our listeners did write in and ask what was it like playing domestic cricket for so long before getting that break to international? And can you just share with us a little bit about your journey, how you got into cricket, what domestic was like at that point, and all the way to your debut?
Well, mine was quite a strange journey. It all started way back when I was 14 or 15. In Patna, that's the place where I was born. Patna happens to be the capital of Bihar. I didn't have very strong background in cricket, but thankfully I got a lot of support from my parents, especially my father, who insisted that we should take up this game. I followed my two elder brothers in this wonderful sport. I used to follow them wherever they would go and play. That is how I managed to get that kind of interest in this sport. Fortunately, I was admitted to a very good missionary school in Patna, St. Xavier's. And this is how things turn out. We had a missionary father, Father Cleary, who at some point of time had played county cricket in England. I think it was for Northamptonshire or one of the big counties there. And then he came and he joined St. Xavier's Patna as a teacher. And he's the one who brought the sport to the school. So you would have these regular, school teams and inter-school tournaments, and he was the forefront of organizing such kind of tournaments. So when I joined school, I think it was fifth standard when I joined St. Xavier's, and I don't know how. Somehow he managed to find the spark in me, and he felt that I should pursue the sport. And I got a lot of support from my principal in those days. I remember I would be out, when I think it was in sixth or seventh. That's when I started to play higher grade of cricket, which means I started to play the under 15s for my district team, the under 15s for my state team. And I would be busy from, say, November till about January. Had no time to appear for my final exams. But my principal at that point of time was Father George Thana. He gave me that leeway that you don't have to appear for your final exams. And if you recall, those were the calendar years of January to December, and you had to appear for a final exams in December. And that was the peak cricket season in those days. And Father Thana felt that because I have immense potential, a lot of talent, so I should forget about appearing for the final exams. You please go out and play, do the best for your school team, for your state side, or whatever chances you get. Once you're back from once the season is over, then he would take some special examinations for me. So that's the kind of support I received from the school. That is how I managed to pursue cricket in such a big way, with a lot of passion and a lot of interest. And I think the turning point in my career came when I was picked to play for under 19, India under 19, way back in 1982. We traveled to the West Indies as the under 19 side. And Maninder, incidentally, was my captain then. And we had a very strong young Indian side that went to the West Indies. We had Chetan Sharma, and we had 2-3 other cricketers who went on to play first-class cricket. We had Lakshman Sivaramakrishnan. So such players were there in the squad. And I think once I played for the under 19 Indian side, that's when I felt that I can take it up as a career. I can make myself into a professional cricketer. And then I started to have this ambition of playing for my country. Yeah, so that is how it all panned out.
Oh, that's great. I know DJ has a question. I have just one quick question before that. So you weren't pushed into football goalkeeping. That's not how you became a wicketkeeper, right? That's not the story of all great Indian wicketkeepers.
Well, my critics may say that I would keep wickets like a goalkeeper.
No,
which is no bad thing.
I know. I agree.
It's worked out pretty well for some others. But, I had a question. I mean, it's actually not my question. It's from Shankar at Shankar's Take on Twitter, who's because we're talking about your early career, and now we're looking at a point in time where not a lot of players from the east side of the country or the east zone made it into the national team in the late 80s or early 90s, so to speak. So I think Shankar asked, what is the reason behind that? Of course, Saurav Ganguly came around and changed that between 92 and 96, but even he took 4 years with his prodigious talent. So any thoughts on that? Was that something that you faced coming through the ranks and playing domestic cricket for about 15 years before making your ODI debut in 97?
Oh, well, DJ, not only me, most of the cricketers who came from East, or even for that matter, Central, they went through the entire turmoil of not being picked for the national side. And even for East Zone, you have to play for a strong state like Bengal, for that matter, to be recognized. And I think that's one of the reasons why, and I can be very frank with my opinion on this, that is one of the reasons that Indian cricket did not flourish at the kind of rapid pace which we have seen in the past maybe decade or two, because things have really opened up. The selection policies have become far more transparent. There are different platforms where cricketers from tier 2, tier 3 towns can also make their presence felt. They have enough potential to showcase their talent, provided they're given enough exposure. And all this has happened over the past maybe 15 to 20 years. But during those days, it was extremely difficult to get into national recognition. And one really had to work doubly hard compared to the other cricketers who came from, say, for instance, Delhi or Mumbai or even Bangalore, for that matter, or even Tamil Nadu. And such players got a lot of preference in selection policies.
And that leads me to my next question, which another listener sent in, which is Archit Puri, who's incidentally another host of an IVM podcast. So it seems like a family scene here. Archit asks, are selection committees now more data driven? And is that the reason for the change? Because, I mean, obviously that was a different time. Now we're looking at a different time. And as you said, it's opened up more. But is that because it's more driven by data?
Not really. It's getting backed by data, but it depends on the individual selection committee. For instance, I had a 4-year term as a national selector from the 2012 to 2016. So we would travel across the country to watch a lot of these domestic cricket. That gave us, enough idea the kind of players we need to pick who can serve the nation for a number of years to come. We were able to figure out the area of concern, so to speak, in the Indian side, and what are the slots to be filled in. And on top of that, the data analyst who was with the Indian team, we would interact with him on a regular basis, and he would, give us a lot of inputs in terms of stats, in terms of matchups, and all those kind of stuff. So I think in the end, it depends on the individual how you take it forward. But yes, it is being backed a lot by data. But in the end, DJ, I would say that transparency has come in because VCI has started to pick the right kind of people as selectors. And I am being very honest in my assessment. The so-called zonal bias has gone away because most of the domestic matches are being covered by the electronic media, by print media. It is on television these days. So viewers get an idea as to who's doing well, who's not doing well. You have so many digital platforms who talk about particular players. So selectors possibly can't miss out on a player who comes from Bihar, who comes from Orissa, or who comes from, say UP. And that is why we see abundance of talent coming through from tier 2, tier 3 towns.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. And so we heard your story up till the time you were ready to play for India. Can you talk us through a little bit about what it was like to make your debut in South Africa? What did you feel at that moment? What was it like? Who was on the field with you at that time? What did they say to you? And just anything that we'd love to hear from you.
Mine was a long wait, Varun, because initially my first brush with international cricket was way back in 1989. I went to the West Indies with the Indian team under the captaincy of the Litwin Saka. I only played 2 first-class matches. It was a long tour. We played 5 test matches, and if I remember correctly, I think we played 5 ODIs. But I got to play only 2 first-class matches. Came back and did not get to play for the national team for the next 7 to 8 years. So that's why I said at the beginning that mine was a long wait. But finally, I got a break in 1997 when we traveled to South Africa. We played the test matches, didn't get a look in the test matches because Nayan Mongia was there as a wicketkeeper, and he did pretty well, so one can understand. He played all the test matches. But before we had a tri-series, tri-nation one-day series after the test matches. It was South Africa, India, and Zimbabwe. And fortunately for me, I think a day before the first one-day game, Nayan got injured. But I had no inkling that I will get to play the next day in the first international against South Africa. So morning when we went to the ground, Madan Lal was our coach. He came up to me maybe half an hour, 45 minutes before the game started, and he told me that you're playing the first the the first game, and I was too shocked to even react, and I had no time to prepare. Thankfully for me, that I think we fielded first, so I had some breathing space. I took my own time to settle down. But the phase was very good because 1997 was a time when we had a very young side. And Sachin was the captain. We had Rahul Dravid who just come in, Saurav and VVS, Srinath and Venkatesh Prasad and Anil Kumble. And I played with most of them at the domestic level. So it was a very happy place to be in, and everybody was geared up to do well, to win game matches for our country. So it was a very healthy atmosphere in the team. So people were extremely supportive. My colleagues were very supportive. I took some time to settle down, but I think eventually it turned out quite well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That I was getting excited just kind of hearing you talk about that. What was it like sharing the dressing room with some of the greats like Sachin, Dravid, Ganguly, even Srinath, Prasad, Kumble? What was it like sharing a dressing room with them? Were you in awe of the international game and the pressure, or did they kind of just help you ease into it?
As I said, I think most of the names you have mentioned now, because we have played against each other for a number of years. I had played for E-Zone, and most of these cricketers from South had played against E-Zone for South. Even Sachin, for that matter, I played with him long time back when he made his debut in a Ranji Trophy game. So knew all these players very well. So it was very easy for me to settle down. It was interesting to note, the different ways of preparation. For instance, Sachin Tendulkar would start to focus maybe 2-3 days before a test match start. Rahul Dravid was also built in the same vein. Anil Kumble also extremely focused. Someone like VVS, he had his own way of preparing for a game. Saurav Ganguly, we are close buddies. We played with each other. I have played under him. He has played under me. So I knew his kind of mindset, and all that was beneficial for me to generally grow as a cricketer and as a person. It was great learning to see all these players who have seen them grow, turn out to the nation altogether. So yeah, I think it was a very helpful kind of a state of the of the Indian dressing room at that point of time. Each one of us was trying to help each other so that it becomes beneficial for the side.
I have so many questions about this tour because it's bringing back so many memories, 96, 97. And one of our listeners, Rahul Jain _act, has written in, how quick was Alan Donald? Now, you may have been comfortable in your own dressing room, but this is a bowling attack that got Sean Pollock, Alan Donald, Brian McMillan, Lance Klusner. I think Paul Adams played that series as well. I mean, I have so many questions, so many memories. Sachin scoring 104 at Benoni against Zimbabwe to help us qualify, and then Alan Donald sledging Rahul Dravid in the final of that, the replayed final of that series, right? Because there were two. It was played on successive days. So
yes.
What were? I mean, talk us through all of these. Firstly, let's talk about Donald. How quick was he to bat against? Did you get a chance to play him?
I did in the one-day games. South Africa had a very strong and a very potent pace bowling attack. They had Alan Donald, they had Sean Pollock, a master of swing bowling. They also had Zulu Lance Klusner, who was quickest of the lot. But Alan Donald, I felt was at his peak. And I remember the first test match we played at Durban. In the second innings, if you recall, I think we were bowled out for about 60 odd.
Yeah, and stump card, Sachin's stump card.
Isn't it? Yeah, and I was in the dressing room. I wasn't playing, but our batsmen had really no time to recover. And I remember that the openers went into bat, and Saurav was supposed to come in at number 3, and it not even padded up. And that's when, in the first over, the second over, a wicket fell, and all of us rushed in and helped Saurav Ganguly to pad up. He went in at number 3, and I think he hardly faced 2 or 3 balls, and again his stumps went cartwheeling. So I mean, going back, it was quite frightening, so to speak. One didn't know how to recover from that kind of an onslaught from the South African speedsters. But full credit to our young, batting lineup. Because before that, I think all these 3-4 players had just played one home series, and then before that, the England series in which Saurav and Rahul Dravid had made their debut, and VVS had just come in. So these cricketers were still growing. I mean, they were still trying to find their feet at international cricket. But I think from after that first Test match debacle, we came back very strongly in the Test match at Cape Town, where Sachin and Azhar scored those blistering hundreds. Then in the last Test match at Joburg, Rahul Dravid got his first Test match 100, and we came very close in beating South Africa in that Test match. So we did manage to recover quickly. But yes, I think the first impact which Alan Donald and company had on the Indian batting lineup was quite scary. So everybody had to make a lot of adjustments in trying to adjust to the pace. The wickets those days were extremely fast. I remember very well that I was keeping to Srinath at Pretoria, that is the Centurion Sport Park, and Centurion at that point of time was supposedly the fastest track in the world. And I was keeping wickets to Srinath. I was standing almost beyond the 30-yard line. And if you recall, I think Paul Strang and Brian Strang, they were two brothers. So Paul Strang was a leggy and he was batting. It was a pretty close game. And on couple of occasions, he ran after leaving the ball because I was collecting it here. By the time I wanted to try and throw the ball at the wickets, he had already completed a run. So I think those were days when it took us some time to adjust to the pace of the wicket as well as the pace of this bowling of the South African pace bowlers.
Very interesting. And Mr. Saba Karim, before we go into a break, I do have to ask you, who were some of your idols as you were growing up? Maybe wicket keepers, maybe non-wicket keepers. Who did you look up to in the game?
I wouldn't say it as idols. I would say that I learned a lot from them. As I mentioned earlier, I come from Patna, and we didn't have any big names those days. We had our own local coaches. They tried their best to inculcate in us the different skill sets of cricket. But I learned wicket keeping from a book of Alan Knott, and that was gifted to me by my father at a very early age. That was the only book on wicket keeping, and I learned most of my footwork and my technique from the book. So that's how I grew up as a wicket keeper. Because that's when I decided, no, I should start to keep wickets. But I had to learn all the skill. But none of the local coaches would help me, however much they tried. So I had to fall back on Alan Knott's book on wicket keeping, and I learned so much from him. Some of the skill set which I remember even now are still still quite vivid in my thoughts. So that's how I grew up. And then as I started to play, Ranji Trophy, then I interacted a lot with Mr. Kirmani. I think Kiribhai was a great influence. I remember we played a Wills Trophy game against Karnataka, and he gifted me red wicket keeping gloves. Those were his favorites. So that's the kind of encouragement I received from some of these legendary cricketers.
Very interesting. Wicket keeping from a book. You're going to hear a lot more fun things after we take this CH strategic timeout. So join us on the second half of this show. Welcome back from the CH strategic timeout. We have Mr. Saba Karim here with us. We've spoken a lot about great, interesting stories of his in the first half of the show. Mr. Karim, you also said, you mentioned keeping to Srinath. And we do have to ask you about, what happened in your career keeping to Anil Kumble and the injury. It's tough to watch even as a fan. I can't imagine what you went through as a player. Anything you can share with our listeners about, that experience and what you felt at that point? How did you recover from it? We know that 6 months later you came back and played a test match as well. Our listeners would love to hear a little bit about that.
I think except for that injury, it was good fun keeping wickets to Anil Kumble. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
But it was rather unfortunate, and it was no fault of Anil Kumble. It happened in Asia Cup game against Bangladesh, and I was keeping wickets. Those days, keepers would not wear a helmet while keeping to spinners because all of us felt that it is not required. And that is how in that game, while keeping wickets to Anil Kumble, there was an opener from Bangladesh. I think if I remember correctly, Javed. I met him recently when we had the pink ball test match. So it was good to chat with him about my injury. And Anil, as everybody knows, very fast off the wicket. And Saurav was the captain. He brought him on during the power play on the first 10 or 15 overs. And Anil would bowl the one which would come into the batsman. And Javed was trying to play it on the one side. My vision was blocked. It brushed the flap of his right leg of the pad, and then from there it deflected and came onto my right eye. I really had no time to react. It is quite strange because generally the eye socket or the curvature, it protects you from this kind of injury. But because I put my head back in trying to avoid the cricket ball that was coming at such a rapid force towards my eye, it somehow hit me directly on my right eye. And that's when everybody rushed onto the ground. We had a wonderful physio, physio at that point of time. Andrew Lepus, now I think he's attached with KKR. So Andrew came, and my other colleagues came in. They took me to the dressing room. I felt I was pretty fine because there was pain, but it wasn't excruciating pain. So Andrew bandaged my right eye, and after a while, after about half an hour, he said he asked me to open my right eye, and I opened both my eyes, and I told him, no, I'm fine. I can see everything. He said, are you sure? I said, yes, kind of. He said, okay, do one thing, cover your left eye, your good eye, and then try and see. So when I covered my left eye and I opened my right eye, I could see nothing. It was complete darkness, and that was a very scary feeling. So that's when Andrew decided I should be taken to the hospital. So I stayed overnight at the hospital in Dhaka. Next day morning, I was flown back to Calcutta. From there, went to Shankar Netralaya, Chennai. I was there for about a month. And my eye pressure went up. My eyesight was 6/60, which means no vision. And from there, doctors worked very hard. The ophthalmologists there, they were the experts. It was such a great place to be in, and they took great care. So I think after about 15 to 20 days, I underwent a surgery for my glaucoma to correct my eye pressure. And I felt I'm recovering. I was put on steroids. So after a month, the doctor there felt that I may be able to get a little bit of my eyesight back. And that's what happened. So I think after about 3 to 4 months, I felt that my eyesight is improving. So from 6/60, it came up to, I think, 6/45, 6/36, 6/24 or something like that. And I felt that I'm recovering quite well. I tried using a contacts, and then I came back. I was staying in Calcutta those days, so I went back to my hometown, Calcutta. I started to practice a little bit with my contacts and those glasses, and I felt that I was getting ready to play international cricket once again. It was a slow process, but because I had that kind of confidence that even if I don't get my normal eyesight, even if I have, say, about 6/18 or 6/20, I could still manage. That is how when a name came up for the test match, again in Dhaka, again at the same ground, I went back and I did manage to play. But it was difficult for me to keep wickets at the international level, especially against spinners, more so against some quick bowlers. I was finding it very difficult. Judging the pace of the ball, judging the pace off the wicket, had double vision, so it wasn't very easy. That is how it all transpired.
I can imagine. No, it was an inspiration to even think that. I can't believe you thought of going back to the same ground just 6 months later and playing.
Yeah, I also felt that because I was in regular touch with my doctors, and I felt that they told me that my eyesight is not going to improve. And I could figure out by November, December that my eyesight was actually deteriorating a little bit. And I felt that this is the only time I'll get to play a test match for my nation. That has been my lifelong ambition. And I felt this is it. Let me try my luck. If I do well and I feel confident, I may continue. But as I told you, I didn't feel comfortable at all. And I think the first time in my life, I felt scared while keeping wickets because number of balls came and hit me on my chest while I was keeping to seamers. That's when I realized that I need to protect at least my one good eye, which is my left eye. It is better to quit instead of trying my luck so far.
Did you wear a helmet in the test match, or
Yes.
were you without a helmet in the test
No, I
match?
came back and I wore a helmet while keeping wickets to spinners. Yeah.
Right.
But the flip side to it is that after my injury, all the wicket keepers started to wear helmet.
Yeah, but even then, Mark Boucher, I think, got a similar injury, didn't he, a few years ago, which was, he was on the verge of playing 100 test matches.
Yes,
so
you're absolutely right. That is quite strange because that's the time when all the wicket keepers had started to wear helmets. while keeping up to bowlers.
Very interesting. And then, of course, since then, you've had so many different roles that you've played off the field. And we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey since that time when you decided to call it quits. If my memory serves me correct, you've been a commentator, you've been a selector, you've held positions at the BCCI. Walk us through a little bit about some of those different roles. And more specifically, just out of pure curiosity, even for myself, we always say for the listeners, this is not for the listeners, this is for me. I would love to know what your time at BCCI was like and what was your role.
It's been an interesting journey after I quit first class cricket. That was way back in 2001 when I decided to leave international cricket. Thankfully for me, I was employed with Tata Steel. I had a great stint with them for about 20 years. So till 2006, I was employed with Tata Steel. I had I worked in different kind of sectors altogether. I joined initially way back in 1986. I was posted in Jamadoba, which is close to Dhanbad. It is a mining town. Was posted there as a sports officer. So 89, I was transferred to Jamshedpur because I wanted to play a better grade of cricket. There I was in administration, so learned the so-called skills of an administrator. From there again, I think in 1994, I was transferred to Calcutta. If you recall, I talked about getting many more opportunities while playing for Bengal. So that's the shift I took from Bihar to Bengal, and in a span of say two years, I did manage to play for my country. So while with Tata Steel in Calcutta, I worked in the procurement division. Then with corporate communications as manager of corporate communications. So I had that kind of corporate background. So 2006, I decided to get full time into broadcasting. That's when I started to take my career as a commentator seriously. I did work as an expert analyst for a number of news channels, did commentary in domestic cricket, at times for Hindi at international level. On one or two series, I had international commentary assignments also as a commentator in English. So that continued.
Sorry, I want to ask one question. For somebody who's not done commentary majority or all their life, how do you prepare for that? Right? Because having the cricket knowledge is one thing, right? Which you have. But how do you prepare for doing international commentary stints?
This is another question for Varun's benefit, by the way.
Yeah, this is more for me.
Not for the listener.
Don't worry, Varun. You are on for it. You can get in anytime.
Yeah, this is more practice for me. But
Yeah. No, I mean, you need to watch the game and start to talk. I mean, that's how you prepare. And I remember my first stint was way back in 1996 during the World Cup. We had to go to Singapore to do commentary for ESPN while I was playing, and that was in Hindi. And I had some wonderful blokes with me. I had Arun Lal, who was been a commentator for a number of years. I had Maninder and company. I had Sikandar Bucks from Pakistan. So we had about 4 or 5 of the former cricketers who had turned commentators. So I learned a lot from them. But the only advice I received from most of my colleagues was that you need to hear yourself. And that's how you pick the nuances of the game, when to speak, when not to speak. These are the different set of rules that one has to understand. And I think it becomes easier if you are fluent in that particular language. And I think you need to speak your mind. And I've always felt like this. While playing, everybody have their own way of playing the game, understanding the game, have their own mindset. And I think that's what you need to bring on the table. You possibly can't agree to whatever the co-commentators are saying. And my logic is very clear. I think the only thing you can agree is to disagree. And that's how you make it more interesting for the viewers. You possibly can't have similar views on how the game is being played.
So DJ, I think we're on the right track, right? 3 of us on the podcast. We've been hosting this for 3 years. We don't agree on anything.
Good. So on anything at all, other than Rishabh Pant being amazing.
Yeah. And I'll come to that later. But I stopped you in the middle. And so after your commentary stint, you were telling us.
Then I national selector 4 years from 2012 to 2016. Very exciting phase. We had Sandeep Patil as our chairman. He empowered us to take decisions. We had a wonderful set of players in the side. We had MS Dhoni as the captain, Virat Kohli as the vice captain. period of transition for the Indian side. If you recall, that's the time when most of our legendary so-called cricketers had retired, or many of them were on the verge of retirement. Sachin retired during that phase. Before we joined, maybe 2-3 months before that, VVS and Rahul Dravid announced the retirement. So we had to search for new faces who can come in and settle with the side. A number of young, exciting cricketers made their debut. Rohit Sharma, Shikhar Dhawan, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, so many of these, Umesh Yadav, so many of these cricketers came in. And that was after we had won the World Cup in 2011. And I remember MS Dhoni talking about, getting some new people in the side, because he felt that all those players who'd been with the side for the past maybe 10 or 12 years, they were on the way out, and we had to, get some young people in the squad. And I think that's what we managed to do. Those 4 years was a very satisfying kind of term for all of us. So really, really enjoyed understanding the dynamics of international cricket. Travel with the side, was able to figure out the players who had the potential to become good leaders once MS retires, and I think that's what actually happened later on. Yeah, so that was my stint with the national team as a selector. And after that, in 2018, January, I joined BCCI as a general manager of cricket operations. I had a 3-year stint with them till January 2021.
Very interesting. I mean, all of these jobs that you've held feel like dream jobs for a lot of people across India. So yeah. That's really interesting for us. Tell us a little bit about what are your thoughts on this current Indian team? First, let me ask you: do you watch a lot of the games as well? Like, are you glued to the TV when India is playing cricket?
While I was with BCCI, I really had no time. Did manage to try and be sync with what is happening, but didn't manage to watch all the matches. It's only when I travel with the team or to watch some of the matches. While during the World Cup, I was there to watch a couple of games. Did manage to watch some of these potential cricketers who were representing India. So that's the kind of involvement I had in terms of actually watching the game. But because I would interact with number of these coaches of the national teams, one could figure out, who's coming up, who's doing well, what are the gray areas, what kind of development scheme we should have, stuff like that. But yeah, after I've quit BCCI, I'm back to my broadcasting, back to my stint as commentator. I do some work for news channel. So focus is back on watching games. Now, with my involvement as Delhi Capitals as a talent head, that's again a huge responsibility. So yeah, now I'm back to watching all these games.
Yeah, and very interesting. You mentioned Delhi Capitals. The three of us are huge Delhi Capitals fans.
Oh, great. Good.
A lot of ups and downs over the years in the IPL, but share with us a little bit about exactly what is your role with them? Like what does it entail? And you mentioned looking for new talent. How difficult is that going to be in a COVID time?
Well, I'm banking on you guys because you're the diehard fans. Please keep your eyes and ears open. Send me some feelers. Act as feeders for Delhi Capital. Let me know if you find some exciting talent. How old are you guys, by the way? If you're young, please put up your hand.
we are past our prime, unfortunately, but we will keep a lookout for young talent.
Yeah, if only this had happened 20 years ago, I would be the first one at the nets.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has really pushed us back, but I think Delhi Capitals is a wonderful franchise to work with. They have a very strong ambition of finding some potential talent to come through and serve Delhi Capitals for a number of years, especially now with the mega auction coming up before the next season. It is hugely important that we track and we monitor a lot of these youngsters who come through, not only at the domestic level, but also at the international level. Watch most of these T20 leagues that is taking place all over the world. Some of these global T10 leagues have come up now. Watch a lot of domestic cricket. Have separate kind of a vertical. Have different categories of selection policies. Have benchmarks. Have parameters where you can slot in such players. And basically create that kind of environment that is helpful for youngsters to grow. Because in the end, IPL, whatever I have gathered from my experience, it is not a testing ground at all. you need to be a finished product. That's when the coach will have immense faith in you to perform during the IPL. And I think for that to happen, you need to have loads of international experience. If not international experience, you need to have a lot of domestic cricket experience. So you're put through different simulation exercises, different match scenarios. That is one way of convincing the coach and the captain that you're ready for the big league, because you possibly cannot afford a slip up in the IPL. So each game is very, very important. You may feel that you're in a strong position, but suddenly there is a string of losses and you go back the ladder. So I think that's how the coach and the captain perceive the particular game. So unless they're convinced about a player that he's the right kind of he has the right kind of metal, the right kind of product who can be useful, whom I can slot in, the right kind of position. That's the only way you get a look in. That's why you see so many of these domestic players who sit in the sidelines for 2-3 years before they get a chance, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Like Avesh Khan this season. I mean, all of us were expecting Ishant or Umesh to fill that third seamer slot after the two South Africans. And Avesh took the IPL by storm, right?
Yes,
and it was, I think it was a surprise for the fans and a surprise for the opposition as well. So did you have an input on that, or was that kind of more the team management that deals with things on the field, or was it a joint effort between all of you?
No, that is a team management's role, and I think I want to keep it very separate. My role is very specific. I need to look at talent. I need to facilitate their progress. I need to get some good cricketers in the mix. Prepare good testimonials for the coaching staff and the team management to have a look at them. Try and work with them in order to build a strong side. So I think especially with the mega auction coming up, I think it is very essential that all of us are on the same page. But yes, you're right. And I think that is what differentiates, from a national selection to an IPL selection. Because, many people may not be aware, it is there on the table, but many people are not aware that IPL selection is all about value for money. It comes with a lot of constraints because you have a ceiling to work with. When you pick a team for the nation or your state side, there is no ceiling. You can pick the best possible 15. You don't even have to worry about anything else. So it's far easier. But here, you are fighting because of this major constraint of finance. So you have to build your side of 24 or 25 within a limited budget. And I think that is the biggest challenge for all these IPL franchisees. And that's what makes it so exciting, isn't it?
And these days, everyone's a selector on social media as well, so including us. We're equally.
Yeah, but it comes in handy. I think when I go back to your earlier question, DJ, because IPL selections are based more on data because that's where you collect all the value. And on top of that, you need to do a lot of cost analysis because before you pick a player, and you need to build your bench strength. You need to have alternatives ready in case you miss out on a number one, number two. So who's your number one, who's your number two, who's your number three, who's your number four for the same position. So one has to do a lot of homework before you sit on the auction table. So I think that is the huge challenge.
And I think it's very interesting. One point you brought up, which is that a lot of us think that the IPL is the testing ground. And then, that when you see a Surya Kumar Yadav or a Kishan go in and play for India, they do so well. But that's not true. The IPL is where the finished product actually appears, performs. And then the India selection or playing for India is just the next natural step, I think.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Because, domestic cricket in India is huge. It's massive. And I think it's a great learning ground for all these cricketers. And everybody has to come through that system. Some players miss out from state selections due to various reasons. That's where some of these IPL scouts come in and spot a talent, then try and pick them up. And then again, these players go back to play state level cricket. And that's where you hone your skill. So I think there is a strong system which prevails now in BCCI structure. So first you need to play for your state side. If you do well, then you play for for India A. And if you do well for India A for a number of years, that's when you get in the national team. So you possibly can't bypass any of these stages. And IPL is a byproduct of whatever we see of domestic cricket. So I think everybody is prepared before they step into the IPL circuit. And there is learning obviously while you're playing, because you're playing in a different arena, but you're already prepared for that. And I think all that happens because of the number of matches most of these cricketers go through while playing domestic cricket. On top of that, you have the India A, which is a very, very strong structure. And I think most of these players have come through a very robust and a very vibrant, India A setup.
Absolutely. Coming to a question I've been waiting to ask you since the start of the show. We are called the Rishabh Pant show by a lot of the fans and self-proclaimed also. We just love the guy. I'm not giving you much room to say anything different, but I'd love to know your view on Rishabh Pant.
He's such an exciting talent. It's great to chat with him. He has his own way of playing the game, own way of looking at life. And I think he's such a young kid, bubbling with energy. He got so many different ideas. He has his own mindset, and it brings in a different dimension to the game altogether. And I think, what many people don't realize this, but you need characters like him for promotion of this wonderful sport. You need characters like him. This is the way you can take the game forward. Because we also need to understand that cricket needs to be globalized in a far better way. And I think that is what ICC is trying to do. ICC is very gung-ho on introducing cricket in multi-sporting event like the Commonwealth, like the Asian Games, like the Olympics. For instance, in 2022 Birmingham Commonwealth Games, they are introducing women cricket. And I think that is the right step. Because otherwise, you're restricted to only about 10 or 12 top cricket playing nations. But there are so many countries who do play, but they don't have that kind of infrastructure. They don't have that kind of talent. So I think you need such characters like Rishabh Pant, like AB de Villiers, even someone like Prithvi Shaw, all the Virat Kohli, to bring a different kind of a facet of the game to the table. And I think it'll help so-called organizations across the nation to promote the game in a big way. And I think there also Rishabh has to play a big, big role, more than what he's doing right now. Yeah.
Very interesting. And then last question from my side. What has been the evolution of the wicketkeeper from your time to today? And India, I mean, I can't remember a time where we've had a Rahul, a Samson, a Pant, a Kishan, all probably who could play T20 cricket in the same playing 11 for India. Like, how has it evolved? Yeah.
We are blessed at this point of time, isn't it? We have so many crazy talented wicket-keeping batsmen coming through the system.
We had a lot at your time as well. You had Mongia, you had yourself, you had Vijay Dhaiya, I think, coming through. Deep Das Gupta was coming through around that time.
Deep was junior to us. MSK was there.
MSK Prasad was there. Yeah.
Ajay Ratra, was he also
there? Ajay Ratra was also junior to us, but Sameer DK was around. But those days there was only one platform where you can play, which is the national team. But here we see so many of them because of different platform that has come into view now. But yes, you're absolutely right. I think evolution has taken place. Most of these keepers work very hard on their batting skills, on their fielding skills, and most of them can get into a particular 11 on the basis of their batting, which is such a wonderful sight to see. Plus, they are very good fielders. Look at Dinesh Karthik, look at Rishabh Pant, look at Sanju Samson. Most of these wicket keepers are brilliant outfielders. They have a very strong arm. During our days, we would struggle. We would hardly work on our fielding. And I think in my entire one-day career, about 34 or 35 one-day matches, I have effected only one run-out. And I don't know whether you guys remember that or not. That was in Sharjah against Pakistan when Inzam Amul and Yusuf Yahana those days, they were
at the same end.
And
were there 2 runouts and 2 balls in that game? Oh yes.
So I was instrumental. Wow. And that was the only direct hit in my entire cricketing career.
I've got so much rubbish filed away in my head.
Oh God! So these keepers have come a long way.
Amazing.
Our days also, I think we would work very hard on our batting, and we started to take our batting very seriously. And many of us used to bat higher up the order for our state. But while playing for the nation, most of us would bat number 7, number 8. So limited opportunities. But it is very heartening to see that young keepers really have worked very hard on different skill set. And all of them have become all-rounders and a great asset for the side they play for.
Do you think there's ever a time in a keeper's career where he thinks I'm not getting an opportunity because you can only ever have one person with the gloves on the field? Should I just start bowling? MS Dhoni does bowl as well, or he's taken an international wicket two maybe if I'm not wrong.
You never know, DJ. That may happen, and I think that is what the sport is all about. I think wicket keepers would also. Everybody wants to be in the 11 all the time. Nobody wants to sit in the reserves. They don't want to be a keeper who travels with the team for 3-4 years without getting a game in. So they want to get into the team. That is one reason why most of them have worked very hard on their batting. In our days, if I remember correctly, I think it was Chandu Pandit who played in the 11 as a batsman. But now most of these players can get in as a batsman, and if they feel they can add some more skill to their to the repertoire, then why not? You never know; these things may happen, and most of them do try their luck in the nets by rolling their arm over.
Yeah. Awesome. There you have it. So, Mr. Saba Karim, that brings us to the end of our episode. I just want to say thank you again for joining us. For all our listeners, please do tune in for this episode and others that Mr. Saba Karim is running on the Khelneeti podcast, as you heard him say at the start of the episode. Mr. Saba Karim, thank you once again for joining.
Thanks a ton. Really enjoyed this interaction with all of you. And please do log into the IVM podcast, Khelneeti. You can watch me there also, expressing my views on the game.
Great. And we know where to reach you now with the talent suggestions for Delhi Capital.
Yes,
so we will be sure to reach out.
Yeah, more than welcome.
Straight to the spam folder.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.